Welcome back to my channel. My name's Lisa Jane, and if you are new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video, and if you are returning, thank you as always for your continued support. Today's video is a little bit different to what I usually do, and I've seen a few people doing this. It is a little bit later in the year than I would have liked to have done it, but nevertheless, I think you are going to enjoy. Today's video, we are going to be using a website called PubMeeple. I will try and link it down in the description below in case you want to go and have a go yourselves. And I would love to know how you get on if you do this. And basically what I've done is I've entered all the books I've read so far in 2026. So on my list, there was 38 read books. I haven't included the 5 DNFs of the year. I've only put the books I've physically read. So the total is 38. And what it's going to do, it's going to do a lot of comparisons. You will have seen this before, no doubt. It's going to do a lot of comparisons, and then we're going to come up with a list from least favourite to favourite. So without further ado, we will just get into it. If you see me looking down, it's just because I'm looking at the screen. So it's going to give me some options. So it just says you are about to rank 38 items. This will take an estimated 111 comparisons. Do you want to continue? So obviously, yes, please. The first comparison is The Will of the Many by James Islington or The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff. How can you put them two up against each other? That is actually ridiculous. I think, if I remember rightly, The Will of the Many is outstanding. I don't think I gave it 5 stars though. I think I gave it 4.5 or 4.75, if I remember rightly. But it is an excellent book to be going up against The Bright Years. But The Bright Years I gave 5 stars, so I think on that reasoning I'm going to choose The Bright Years. A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain is up against The Daisy Chain Flower Shop by Laurie Gilmore. So, A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly is book number 1 in the Compelling Fate saga by Sophia St. Germain. I really enjoyed this book, and I think I remember giving it around a 4.25 star rating. It was a good introduction to the series. I like the world building. We've got Faye in there from what I can remember. I am really looking forward to continuing on. And then we've got The Daisy Chain Flower Shop by Laurie Gilmore, which is book number 6 in the Dream Harbour series. I love the Dream Harbour series. They are just a fun, good time. And I think The Daisy Chain Flower Shop was my lowest rating of the series though. So on that comparison, I am going to choose A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly. Then we've got Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins up against The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. I cannot believe this. It's 2 5 stars again up against each other. I honestly thought this would be easy. So Catching Fire, Suzanne Collins, I think we all know this is part of the Hunger Games series. This is book number 2, I believe, in the original Hunger Games trilogy. And yeah, I gave it 5 stars. I listened to it on audio and loved it. But then we've got The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And I also gave this 5 stars. And it is a totally different type of book. But I think on this, we will go The Correspondent. I'm going to do it. Then we have Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan versus The Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Nora Goes Off Script was my first Annabelle Monaghan book. And yeah, really enjoyed it and have continued to read some of her work. Evidence of the Affair is only a short story by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I did enjoy it for what it was, but I'm not going to go against Nora Goes Off Script with that one. So Nora Goes Off Script won that one. We then have up against each other Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke against Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. Again, Same Time Next Summer was the second book I've read by her and really enjoyed it. I didn't like one of the tropes in there. That's all I'll say on that. I didn't really enjoy that, but her writing style is really fast paced and I just did enjoy the multiple POV. but Yesteryear has got to top it. I know there's been mixed reviews on Yesteryear, but I really enjoyed it. It did leave me staring at a wall for about half an hour, wondering what the hell I'd just read. However, yeah, Yesteryear has to be the one I choose. We then have, oh my god, Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling, which is a romantasy, up against The Winged Game by Sophie Kim, which is also like a sports romantasy. I loved these ones both equally. Fear the Flames I think I rated higher, if I remember. Or did I rate them the same? I don't know. But going on enjoyment, I just loved them both equally. I'm gonna go for The Winged Game. I'm gonna do it. The next comparison is Diabound by Sable Sorensen. It's up against In the Veins of the Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy. Diabound is a fantasy following Merrin in an academy setting. And then we've got In the Veins of the Drowning, which is a sirens fantasy book, which I really enjoyed as well. But I have to say, I think Diabound tips the balance on this one. We then have A Stage Set for Villains by Shannon J. Spann against How to Write a Love Story by Catherine Walsh. Absolutely no qualms with this one. A Stage Set for Villains was amazing, and How to Write a Love Story I just wasn't bothered by, just wasn't my kind of book. We've then got A Flame and Fury by Michaela Bridge against Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. I'm gonna pick Rachel Schneider because, yeah, A Flame and Fury is a YA fantasy book. It was good. It was a quick read. I listened to it on audio and read it to get, you know, I did a bit of reading it physically and then listened to it on audio. But Metal Slinger, yeah, that's got to take the top spot there. We've now got The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff versus Powerless by Lauren Roberts. We've already spoke about how much I love The Bright Years. Powerless by Lauren Roberts obviously is the first book in a series. And yeah, I did enjoy it, but Bright Years wins. We've then got The Will of the Many by James Islington over Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Again, The Will of the Many has to take that spot. We've then got In the Weeds by B.K. Borison versus Mistborn, Book 1 in Era 1 by Brandon Sanderson. I think it's also known as Mistborn, the Final Empire. In the Weeds is book number 2 in the Love Light series. I absolutely love this series with my whole heart. It's everything I hoped it would be. It's them small town vibes, and I loved we get the connections from different books. And then we've got Mistborn, which is book number 1 in the Mistborn series. Mistborn was excellent. It took me some time to get through it. However, I think just for the enjoyment factor, I think I probably did enjoy In the Weeds more. So we're going to pick B.K. Borison. Then we have A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly up against Wrath of the Dragons by Olivia Rose Darling. I'm going to choose for this one, Wrath of the Dragons by Olivia Rose Darling. That is the second book to Fear the Flames in the Fear the Flames series. And I loved Fear the Flames and I loved Wrath of the Dragons. We left off on quite a bit of a cliffhanger in that book. And yeah, I can't wait for the third book to come out next year. Then we have The Thorn Queen by Sasha Payton Smith up against Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. I really love The Thorn Queen. The Thorn Queen is book number 2 in the Rose Bargain duology. I loved the Rose Bargain and loved The Thorn Queen, and I would recommend that duology to anybody. It is YA, so, you know, a lot of people can get enjoyment out of it. And then Mixed Signals again. I just love the Love Light series. It's not for everybody. It is for me. Mixed Signals takes the vote on that one. And this next one's easy. So we've got The Correspondent by Virginia Evans up against When We Were Friends by Jane Green. When We Were Friends by Jane Green is another short story. It was okay. Nothing outstanding. The Correspondent wins. The next one is Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins or When We Were Friends by Jane Green. Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins has got to win that one. We've now got 2 new books. The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrian Young, or My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. I think I rated these both around the 4 stars. I'm gonna go for... Oh, this is really difficult. The Unmaking of June Farrow is like magical realism. We have some time travel and some, it was quite confusing at times, but I really enjoyed it. And then My Husband's Wife is like a thriller. And I really enjoyed that one. I think that gets mixed reviews, but I really enjoyed it. So maybe it's because I haven't read a thriller in quite a long time, that I enjoyed it. But I think we're going to go for The Unmaking of June Farrow. The next one is Starside by Alex Astor versus Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is a no-brainer for me. Starside was my first read by Alex Astor. It is an adult romantasy or fantasy romance. And Good Girl, Bad Blood is like a YA mystery thriller. It was okay. It was, following the sort of same lines as the first book, because that was book number 2 in the series, but Starside is book number 1 in the Starside series, or I think that's what it's called, and I cannot wait for Stormside to come out next year. So Starside wins. The next comparison is Liar Land by Madison Rupp versus Clean Girl Spring by Willow Hurst. Absolutely no comparison here. If you've watched one of my reading vlogs, Liar Land is actually in it, and I just should have DNF'd it. I gave it, I think, 2.75. It's definitely not worth that. I read it on Kindle Unlimited, and it was a theme park, thriller, but it's very YA, and wasn't for me. And then Clean Girl Spring by Willow Hurst, absolutely loved it. It's it's right here, actually. It's just a really nice seasonal read. I read the one in the autumn, Cozy Girl Fall, and I'll be reading the one that's coming out this winter. So that one wins. We then have Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan versus Reckless by Elsie Silver. I really enjoyed Reckless, but I did enjoy Nora Goes Off Script. I'm going to pick Nora Goes Off Script. And then the next comparison is The Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid versus Reckless by Elsie Silver. It's got to be Reckless by Elsie Silver. If you don't know, Reckless, I think, is the 4th book in the Chestnut Springs series. I read books 1 to 3 last year and finished it off this year. The next comparison is actually Hopeless, which is book number 5 in the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver, versus The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. I am going to say 2 very different books. Obviously, we've got a cowboy romance versus a thriller, but The Night She Disappeared, I really did like that book, so I'm going to choose that one. And Hopeless was probably my least favourite out of the Chestnut Springs series. We then have Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke versus Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. It's a difficult one. I think I'm going to go Mockingjay because that is just a brilliant book. We then have Powerful by Lauren Roberts, which is the novella that comes after Powerless, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And for some reason, I should have known the ending of this book. However, it took me a minute to work out what I was reading. Honest to God, my brain is horrendous. Thoroughly enjoyed that for a novella. And then we've got Daffodil Inn by R.L. Kilmore. Again, these are seasonal romance mystery reads. There's usually some kind of death or murder in the book, and then we're following it along, but there's usually some romance in there as well. But these are really nice books. I've got books 1 and 2 here. So they're worth a read, most definitely. However, on this one, I'm going to pick, I think, Powerful by Lauren Roberts, because Daffodil Inn, which is book number 2, I didn't enjoy that book as much as the first one. Then we have The Winged Game by Sophie Kim up against The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Are you joking me? Are you being serious? The Winged Game, sports romantasy. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is a fantasy. and it was just amazing. I'm going to have to pick The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Now we have A Stage Set for Villains by Shannon J. Spann versus Diabound by Sable Sorensen. I am going to say for this one, Diabound. I really enjoyed it. Then we have A Stage Set for Villains versus In the Veins of the Drowning. Again, I'm going to have to say In the Veins of the Drowning. I really did enjoy that one as well. Now we have The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff versus Metal Slinger. I'm going to go The Bright Years. Loved that book. Then it's The Will of the Many versus Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. And I'm going to go The Will of the Many. Now we've got Powerless by Lauren Roberts versus Metal Slinger. I'm going to go Metal Slinger for that one. The next one is Powerless Lauren Roberts versus Of Flame and Fury by Michaela Bridge. I'm going to go Powerless by Lauren Roberts. The next comparison is Wrath of the Dragons by Olivia Rose Darling, which, like I said, is book number 2 in Fear the Flames series, against In the Weeds, which is book number 2 in the Love Light series. I'm going to go Wrath of the Dragons, I think, because I really did love that one. Then we have A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain versus In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. I'm going to go In the Weeds. I did love A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly, but I just loved the Love Light series. Then we've got A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly versus Mistborn. What do I do here? I did like Mistborn, but it's not my typical type of read. And although I am going to continue with the series, I'm going to go A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly there. Then we have The Daisy Chain Flower Shop versus Mistborn. It's got to be Mistborn. It was very clever. We then have The Correspondent versus Mixed Signals. It's got to be The Correspondent. Loved it. Even though I do love Mixed Signals. Then we've got Catching Fire, Suzanne Collins versus Mixed Signals. It's got to be Catching Fire, I'm afraid. Then we have When We Were Friends by Jane Green versus Mixed Signals. Mixed Signals, hands down, wins. We've got When We Were Friends, Jane Green versus The Thorn Queen by Sasha Payton Smith. The Thorn Queen has to win. We've got Starside versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. For me, Starside wins that one. We've then got Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. And I would say The Unmaking of June Farrow wins. Then got 2 thrillers up against each other, which is great. Good Girl, Bad Blood, Holly Jackson versus My Husband's Wife. Obviously, one is YA and one isn't. But I would say My Husband's Wife wins that one. We then got Nora Goes Off Script versus Clean Girl Spring. I am going to pick Clean Girl Spring because I really do like them books. We've then got Nora Goes Off Script versus Liarland. Nora Goes Off Script. We've got Reckless by Elsie Silver versus Liarland. Reckless. Evidence of the Affair, Taylor Jenkins Reid versus Liarland. This is an issue because Evidence of the Affair, like I said, is a short story. So really, are we being unfair putting a full book up against it? I will put Liarland, but I really didn't like it. We've then got Mockingjay versus The Night She Disappeared. It's got to be Mockingjay. We've then got Yesteryear versus The Night She Disappeared, and it's got to be Yesteryear for me. Then we've got Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan versus The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. This is a bit closer. I'm going to go Same Time Next Summer. The next one is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab versus Powerful by Lauren Roberts. It's got to be The Invisible Life. Then we have The Winged Game by Sophie Kim versus Powerful by Lauren Roberts. It's got to be The Winged Game. Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling versus Powerful by Lauren Roberts. It's got to be Fear the Flames. And then we've got The Bright Years versus Diabound. It's got to be The Bright Years. The Bright Years was just immense this year. Then we've got The Will of the Many versus Diabound. I'm going to say The Will of the Many because that was really good. We've got Metal Slinger versus Diabound. I'm going to choose Diabound for that one. We've then got Metal Slinger versus In the Veins of the Drowning. I'm going to pick In the Veins of the Drowning, I think, for that one. We've then got Metal Slinger versus A Stage Set for Villains. I'm going to choose Metal Slinger for that one. We then have Powerless by Lauren Roberts versus A Stage Set for Villains by Shannon J. Spann. I'm going to go for A Stage Set for Villains. I think that was really good. Then we have Powerless, Lauren Roberts versus How to Write a Love Story by Catherine Walsh. Definitely Powerless. A Flame and Fury by Michaela Bridge versus How to Write a Love Story. It's got to be A Flame and Fury. And we have The Correspondent versus The Wrath of the Dragons. Two completely different books, which is really difficult. I suppose they have to be ranked though. So we are going to go The Correspondent because I love that one. We've got Catching Fire versus Wrath of the Dragons. I'm going to go Wrath of the Dragons for that one, I think. Even though I think they were both 5-star reads for me. We've then got Catching Fire versus In the Weeds. We're going to go Catching Fire for that one. And Mixed Signals versus In the Weeds. Which book did I enjoy more? I think In the Weeds was my favourite out of the two I've read, but I did really enjoy both. Then got Mixed Signals versus A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly. I'm going to go Mixed Signals because I really enjoyed that one. We've then got The Thorn Queen versus A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly. And on this one, I'm going to go A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly. Next up is The Thorn Queen versus Mistborn. I'm going to choose The Thorn Queen. Then we have A Short Story, When We Were Friends by Jane Green up against Mistborn. Mistborn wins that one. Then we've got When We Were Friends up against The Daisy Chain Flower Shop. The Daisy Chain Flower Shop wins. The next one is Clean Girl Spring by Willowhurst versus My Husband's Wife. I'm going to pick Clean Girl Spring, I think, for that one. The next one is Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan versus My Husband's Wife. I'm going to pick Nora Goes Off Script. Reckless by Elsie Silver or My Husband's Wife. Reckless. Liarland versus My Husband's Wife. It's got to be My Husband's Wife. Liarland versus Good Girl Bad Blood. We're going to go Good Girl Bad Blood. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue versus Mockingjay. Two completely different types of books again, but we're gonna have to go for The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Then I've got The Winged Game versus Mockingjay. I'm gonna go Mockingjay for that one. We've got The Winged Game versus Yesteryear. I'm gonna choose The Winged Game because I really enjoyed it. We then have Fear the Flames versus Yesteryear. I'm gonna go Yesteryear because I really did enjoy that one and I flew through it. Then we have Fear the Flames versus Same Time Next Summer. It's got to be Fear the Flames. Powerful Lauren Roberts versus Same Time Next Summer. I'm going to pick Same Time Next Summer for that one. Powerful versus The Night She Disappeared. Yeah, let's go The Night She Disappeared. Powerful versus Hopeless. I'm going to go Powerful because, like I say, I wasn't really fussed on Hopeless by Elsie Silver. Then we have Death at Daffodil Inn versus Hopeless. I'm going to choose Death at Daffodil Inn. We've got The Correspondent versus The Bright Years. Which one do I pick? I'm going to go The Bright Years because I just think that was incredible. We've got The Correspondent versus The Will of the Many. Totally, completely different books. But I'm going to go The Correspondent because that was so up there this year. We've got Wrath of the Dragons versus The Will of the Many. It's got to be The Will of the Many. We've got Wrath of the Dragons versus Direbound. I'm going to pick Direbound. I really have enjoyed that book. We've got Wrath of the Dragons versus In the Veins of the Drowning. I'm going to choose Wrath of the Dragons for that one. Then we've got Catching Fire versus In the Veins of the Drowning. I'm going to choose Catching Fire. In the Weeds versus In the Veins of the Drowning. I'm going to go In the Weeds because I do love them. And Mixed Signals versus In the Veins of the Drowning. We're going to pick Mixed Signals. A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly versus In the Veins of the Drowning. I'm going to go In the Veins of the Drowning for that one. A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly versus Metal Slinger. I'm going to go for Metal Slinger, I think. And then we've got A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly versus A Stage Set for Villains. we are going to choose A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly. We've then got The Thorn Queen versus A Stage Set for Villains. I'm going to go with The Thorn Queen because I really did enjoy that. We've then got Mistborn versus A Stage Set for Villains. I'm going to go A Stage Set for Villains for that one. We've then got Mistborn versus Powerless by Lauren Roberts. We're going to go Mistborn. We've got The Daisy Chain Flower Shop versus Powerless. I'm going to go Powerless by Lauren Roberts. We've then got The Daisy Chain Flower Shop versus Of Flame and Fury. I'm going to pick The Daisy Chain Flower Shop. We've then got When We Were Friends by Jane Green, which is the short story, and that's versus Of Flame and Fury. It's got to be Of Flame and Fury. When We Were Friends versus How to Write a Love Story. I'm going to pick How to Write a Love Story, but I really didn't particularly like that one. We've got The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue versus Starside. I think both are 5 stars. I'm going to pick Starside, but I did love Addie LaRue. Next, we've got The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. It's got to be The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Then we've got Mockingjay versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. I'm going to choose Mockingjay. Then we've got The Winged Game versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. It's got to be The Winged Game for me. Then we've got Yesteryear versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. That's got to be Yesteryear. Then we've got Fear the Flames versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. That has got to be Fear the Flames. Same Time Next Summer versus The Unmaking of June Farrow. I'm going to pick The Unmaking of June Farrow on that one. Then we've got Same Time Next Summer versus Clean Girl Spring. I'm going to pick Clean Girl Spring. Then we've got 2 Annabelle Mulligan books up against each other, which is Same Time Next Summer and Nora Goes Off Script. Nora Goes Off Script was the better plot story for me. Same Time Next Summer was a bit uncomfortable with. Then we have Same Time Next Summer versus Reckless by Elsie Silver. I'm going to go Reckless on that one. We've got Same Time Next Summer versus My Husband's Wife. I'm going to go My Husband's Wife because I did enjoy that book. We've then got Same Time Next Summer versus Good Girl, Bad Blood. I'm going to choose Same Time Next Summer. We then have The Night She Disappeared versus Good Girl, Bad Blood. I'm going to choose The Night She Disappeared. We then have Powerful by Lauren Roberts versus Good Girl, Bad Blood. It's got to be Powerful. Then we have Death at Daffodil Inn versus Good Girl, Bad Blood. I'm going to go for Death at Daffodil Inn. We have Hopeless versus Good Girl, Bad Blood. I'm going to go Hopeless. We then have Starside versus The Bright Years. Can we guess what I'm going to choose? Yes, The Bright Years. We then have Starside versus The Correspondent. I'm going to say The Correspondent. I really enjoyed that book. We then have Starside versus The Will of the Many. I'm going to go The Will of the Many. We then have Starside versus Diabound. I'm going to choose Starside. We then have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue versus Diabound. I'm going to go The Invisible Life. We then have Mockingjay versus Diabound. I'm going to go Mockingjay. We then have The Winged Game versus Diabound. I'm going to choose Diabound for this one, actually. We then have The Winged Game versus Wrath of the Dragons by Olivia Rose Darling, and I'm going to pick Wrath of the Dragons. We then have The Winged Game by Sophie Kim versus Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, and I'm going to choose Catching Fire. We then have The Winged Game versus In the Weeds. I'm going to pick The Winged Game because that was really good. We then have Yesteryear versus In the Weeds, and I'm going to pick Yesteryear. We have Fear the Flames versus In the Weeds, and I'm going to pick Fear the Flames. Next one is The Unmaking of June Farrow versus In the Weeds. I'm going to pick In the Weeds, actually. And then the next one is The Unmaking of June Farrow versus Mixed Signals. Again, I'm going to pick Mixed Signals. Then we have The Unmaking of June Farrow versus In the Veins of the Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy. I'm going to pick In the Veins of the Drowning. We have The Unmaking of June Farrow versus Metal Slinger. I'm going to pick The Unmaking of June Farrow for that one. We have Clean Girl Spring versus Metal Slinger. We'll pick Metal Slinger. We then have Clean Girl Spring versus A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly. I think I'm going to go for A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly on that one. We then have Clean Girl Spring versus The Thorn Queen. I think I'm going to pick Clean Girl Spring for that one, even though I really did enjoy The Thorn Queen. We then have Nora Goes Off Script versus The Thorn Queen. I'm going to pick The Thorn Queen. We have Nora Goes Off Script versus A Stage Set for Villains. I'm going to pick Nora Goes Off Script. We have Reckless by Elsie Silver versus A Stage Set for Villains. I'm going to choose A Stage Set for Villains there. We then have Reckless versus Mistborn. I'm going to choose Mistborn. We then have Reckless by Elsie Silver up against Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I'm going to choose Powerless. We then have Reckless by Elsie Silver up against The Daisy Chain Flower Shop. I'm going to choose Reckless by Elsie Silver. We then have My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney up against The Daisy Chain Flower Shop. I'm going to choose My Husband's Wife. Then we have Same Time Next Summer versus The Daisy Chain Flower Shop. I'm going to pick The Daisy Chain Flower Shop only because, although I like the book, Same Time Next Summer, it was the plot line. We now have Same Time Next Summer versus A Flame and Fury. So I think I'm going to pick A Flame and Fury. We have Same Time Next Summer versus How to Write a Love Story. I'm going to choose Same Time Next Summer. Then we have The Night She Disappeared versus How to Write a Love Story. I'm going to choose The Night She Disappeared. We then have Powerful by Lauren Roberts versus How to Write a Love Story by Catherine Walsh. And that's going to be Powerful. We have Death at Daffodil Inn versus How to Write a Love Story. I'm going to choose Death at Daffodil Inn. We then have Hopeless by Elsie Silver versus How to Write a Love Story. This is going to have to be Hopeless. Good Girl, Bad Blood versus How to Write a Love Story. I'm going to go Good Girl, Bad Blood. We've got Liarland versus How to Write a Love Story. I'm going to go How to Write a Love Story for that one. Then we've got Liarland versus When We Were Friends. I'm going to go When We Were Friends. And we now have our top 38 books in order. At number 38, we have Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid, this is probably the first short story I read, and it's the first book I've read by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really enjoyed it. It's just it is a short story, and that's probably why it's at the bottom. On to number 37, which was Liarland by Madison Rupp. I didn't really like this book, so I'm not surprised it's down there. It was a 2.75 stars, and it should have been lower than that, possibly even a DNF. We then have When We Were Friends coming in at number 36. This was another short story by Jane Green. And at number 35, we have How to Write a Love Story by Catherine Walsh. This was a romance book, and it just wasn't for me. At number 34, Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is a YA mystery thriller book. Book number 2 in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series. But yeah, wasn't my favourite. At number 33 was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. Not surprising, least favourite book of the Chestnut Springs series. At number 32, we have Death at Daffodil Inn by R.L. Kilmore. Again, I love this series as a whole. There's only 2 books out right now, but the first book I really enjoyed, and this one was okay. At number 31, Powerful by Lauren Roberts. And yeah, that was the novella, which I really enjoyed. Number 30 is The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. Really enjoyed this one as a fast-paced thriller. Then we come into our 20s. At number 29, we have Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. At number 28, we have A Flame and Fury by Michaela Bridge. At 27, we have The Daisy Chain Flower Shop by Laurie Gilmore. At number 26, we have My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. Coming in at number 25, we have Reckless by Elsie Silver. At number 24, we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. At number 23, we have Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. At number 22, A Stage Set for Villains by Shannon J. Spann. At number 21, we have Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. And at number 20, we have The Thorn Queen by Sasha Payton Smith. We now come into the top 20. At number 19, we have Clean Girl Spring by Willow Hurst. At number 18, we have A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain. At number 17, we have Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. And then at number 16, we have The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrian Young. At number 15, we have In the Veins of the Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy. At number 14, we have Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. And then at number 13, we have In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. At number 12, we have Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. And have at number 11, one of my most recent reads, Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke. Another recent read at number 10 is The Winged Game by Sophie Kim. At number 9, we have Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. At number 8, we have Wrath of the Dragons by Olivia Rose Darling. At number 7, we have Diabound by Sable Sorensen. At number 6, we have Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. At number 5, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. At number 4, we have Starside by Alex Astor. At number 3, we have The Will of the Many by James Islington. At number 2, we have The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And at number 1, if you couldn't have guessed by now, we have The Bright Years by Sarah Damoff. I will say The Bright Years and The Correspondent are equally my top favourites this year. If you've got to this part in the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favourite books are of the year so far, and I will see you in my next video. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.